and we can catch up. It's been a couple of weeks, and I know lots has happened, I think, for everyone. Yeah, does somebody at UBC want to start us off maybe with a bit of an update? I guess there was all the GIF tool stuff last week. There was BCGS. There's Myanmar stuff. Yeah, do you want to just go around the table?
Sure, I can give a quick update. So we had the GIF tools. Well, all the sponsors were there. There's about 20 people, I guess, all together with us. And I gotta say, the group of people that are here at UBC GIF, you should be very proud to know them, because they actually gave an amazing presentation. So Devin talked for most of the morning about GIF tools and kind of how it works and the archiving, and then Dom talked about the EM1D, so brought into their the SimPEG. I actually gave an opening on the afternoon about the need for open source resources and computing. So we actually have that available. It's online.
Oh, it's recorded?
Yeah, it was recorded. Audio is not great. We're having a little bit challenges with the audio, but it's okay. You can understand it. And the one thing, I mean, the companies are now like 100% dead on, like, okay, open source and SimPEG. They're really completely accepting of that and also supportive of continued development. So I think that is really good. I mean, if you compare that to where all this was a year ago, it's like night and day. A year ago, yeah. So they're, had companies like, oh, well, are we going to support this kind of research and that, right? And they were pretty much on the fence, but now they realize the importance and the benefit of doing this. So they're no longer trying to tightly hold technology, and they just want to see things develop that are better for everybody. So that was just really came about very powerfully, and and then Dom came in with the talking about the airborne work, and people are really keen on that. And what they're, one of the things that they want to see is documentation and examples for this. So that's good. And then Thibault went through the DC resistivity, DC resistivity and IP, but basically focusing on the DC. Gave just an absolutely smashing presentation, and people were really impressed with the amount of effort and work that has gone into that and the resulting quality.
Excellent.
So that was really good. And then Dom came in and after coffee and talked a bit about kind of the other developments with respect to both the MVI and kind of where we're going with SimPEG and the open source work. And that was, again, really well received. The MVI stuff has got a lot of potential, as well as all the potential stuff. And so people are just continually interested. And then I ended up with a spiel to the companies about the need for archiving and maintenance. And they were actually all fully on board. All 7 companies, I believe, will support a 2-year project for maintenance support. So the connections there, the first connection is to support Roman. So he's primarily on the Fortran codes, so that's not so much of a thing for SimPEG. But Devin will be supported of this, and his mandate will be support all the codes. So that's the GIF tools itself, as well as the open source codes and the IRC codes, and to develop tests and to develop documentation. So I thought all of that was really yeah, I thought that was really good. And, the combination of Thibaut, Dom, and Devin was, yeah, it was great.
Well, excellent. Congratulations. That's extremely exciting to hear. And I'm really glad that they're interested and that the idea of open source is hopefully no longer threatening, but a positive thing.
Yeah, so there's definitely room for carrying out research. The companies are also involved, thinking about that. On the Thursday, so that was the Wednesday. Then on Thursday, we transitioned to tech, and Yago came up, and he and I both gave spiels along with Dom and Thibaut especially, who talked about all of the work that he's been doing with respect to petrophysical inversion. And yeah, I think the companies are really engaged and very interested in this. So the potential for having a consortium would be, I think, pretty high. And they're completely on board with everything being developed in SimPEG and completely open source. So it's great. It is absolutely great. I mean, you could just feel that kind of movement towards the open source and just comfort zone with it. It's just like not even thinking about it. They're accepting it. Like, oh, of course, yeah, sure. And we always been doing this, right? And yeah, so out of that, there's potentially both students and postdocs that could get.
That's great. Well, I guess it's been sort of, what, 3 years now that we've sort of like been easing on the open source. So it's not I mean, this certainly wasn't the first time that they've heard about it. I think last year it seemed like that was the first time where we were maybe serious about it. So yeah, that's great. And what's your take on sort of timelines of this, timelines of a new consortium coming together? Because what I'm thinking of is that one of the things I think we're going to need to do is put some slightly more formal governance and stuff in place for SimPEG, just so that it's documented how decisions are made. And so that is all like clear and transparent, both to companies and to, and to outside contributors who may or may not be connected at all with UBC GIF, like Dieter, for example. Yeah, so what's your take on sort of timelines here?
I think for the consortium research, we're probably looking at maybe a kickoff time, maybe July 1st.
Okay.
Next year. So a few water has to flow under some bridges here, but I think that's kind of where we are. I think we could probably figure that out.
That sounds good. Yeah, so maybe then like in the new year, then trying to put some more stuff in writing about governance, decision making, how SimPEG functions. And I think that that's probably quite timely with like all the work that's being done to refactor SimPEG, like getting to a 1.0, both sort of at a community state and at a code state, sometime before the summer seems quite reasonable and a nice target. Cool.
Good. Yeah, so that was pretty successful. The rest of that afternoon then was really taken over by Dom and Chris and John McGaughy at Mira, and really talking about the evolution of geoscience analysts and the developments that they're doing as far as incorporating GIF tools and BP codes and other stuff. So, and again, the companies were really, I think, pretty keen on that. So that Mira has a consortium, which is basically the flow through of people that have been funding us so far. So I think what the really great news about this is that there's a continuation here. There's a flow where research and codes that have been developed over the last 30 years have got a life, and they're archived, and they're incorporated into a new structure that will continue to give them a life. And at the same time, there's a whole new stream of codes that are coming on that are open source that can also interface with that same superstructure and just get it all out. So it is actually, I think, a really, really nice flow.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, you don't want stuff to be lost, and also things need to be working together in order to really solve this next level of problems. You can't be too diddling around with details. I can give you one more update on the Myanmar stuff. So, as I guess there's just us here, right? So it's yeah, okay. So I tell people what's happening here. So initially we were planning to actually start teaching in a week from now at Mon State, but that kind of hit a roadblock because we found out that in order to get business visas and in order to transfer equipment, we needed to establish a memorandum of understanding between the university and the national government of Myanmar. So that was a bit of a hiatus. However, there were actually some good things that came about of that because it got us in touch with, I believe he's the head of international relations in the, in at least the Department of Rural Development, or maybe a higher up government organization. So, you know, there's what's called the DRD, which is the Department of Developmental Research or something like that. Anyway, so they're kind of like the geophysic, well, they're the engineering groups that do a lot of things. And this guy, Zaran Min, is actually head of the international relationships. So the good thing about that is that here is the first person that we've been talking to that is high enough up in the structure that he could actually make decisions and help us. The other good thing about it, he seems to be really genuinely enthusiastic about us coming, which we could not necessarily say for our previous contacts. So as it's planned right now, we are not going to go and do the field work or the training in a couple weeks, but I'm still going to go over, and as of this morning, I have a meeting, a day-long meeting with Zaran Min in their capital city. So we're going to go there, spend a day with them, trying to kind of iron out all the logistic details. But equally important, we want to get buy-in for our project at the national level. We have actually been targeting completely the wrong people. We've been kind of working at a very small group of people at the state level, okay, who are moderately enthusiastic, if whatever. But that's the wrong people. We should be working at the national level. And I think we're now there. So if we can get the national group to be on board, then they can ask people from individual states to participate, and that could make our catchment much bigger and our impact much bigger. Yeah, exactly. So start from the top up, and now the people at the top actually have some influence, say, to the state level, say like, okay, you guys go ahead and do this. The other thing that we found out, which we had no idea before, is that there actually are in Myanmar a number of iris instruments, at least 10. So there's 10 instruments that we're not taking over the first instrument, okay? And so we probably didn't need to donate anything. But anyway, there's 10 instruments there. And if we can somehow connect with people who are using those instruments or organizations, then that's another area of catchment. And so also that means that these people are interested in DC resistivity. So I think if Ren and Max and I go over and we put on a 2-week training course, even if people are using the instrument, I think they might come, right? And then, they get something out of it, and we can try to arrange it in such a way that, they might even bring some of their data that they've got, and we could try to analyze it. I mean, we just engage them, and I believe that is also at multiple states within Myanmar. And then those people, yeah, they're actually connected with a parallel organization in Myanmar. It's called the Irrigation Department. So there's the DRD, Department of Rural Development, and then there's the Irrigation Department, the water guys. So there might be some really nice connections that we can get between all of our SimPEG stuff that we're developing, and the teaching tools and Soggy's apps for inverting, and the irrigation. So I'm really excited. I think there's the potential here for us to go to Myanmar and really make an impact. So we just need to find the right people, and we need to get them on board. But I'm going to be there October the 28th. I'm going to spend 2 days in their capital, and then I'm going to go to Malamine, and then that's where we were going to carry out the course. So we'll still do that there. We'll still carry out the course, but it'll just be under a different kind of structure. And the fact that the people now in Malamine will have some directions from the top, from the national level, like, get your butts out there and help these guys, will make a big difference. So a few bumps in the road, but I think actually, yeah, every problem is an opportunity. There we go. Yeah. Somebody said that.
One quick thought, would it be constructive if you wrote a short blog post? I'm thinking, like, perhaps, well, Ren, I know you showed some photos from the last time you were around, like just of people out in the field. Grab some screenshots of some of the apps, a screenshot or two from GeoSci, and just kind of put together, like, basically a splashy blog post, so that if when Doug, you're having meetings, if you have something to point people to that says, like, hey, we're using state-of-the-art cool things, you should be excited about this.
Yeah.
Just having a URL that you could point to.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, sure. I know we talked about this a while back, but yeah, we're a bit more developed now, so sure, I think, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, so take a look. So we have, I think, a GeoSci Medium account. If you sign up on Medium and just ping me your name, I'll add you. But you can basically start writing a draft even before I add you. And then you can take a look at the disc ones. Those are actually probably too long. I would try and aim for like a 1 to 2 minute read for a blog post. Nothing super intense, but just like a high level overview. Get people excited about open source software, about state of the art sort of interactive visualizations, those sorts of things.
Do you have an idea how long that would be in word count?
Let me send you
A couple hundred?
Yeah, something like that. Medium sort of gives you like a read time estimate, and I would aim for like, no more than 5 minute read time.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. That's great.
Anyway, so there we are.
Excellent. Does anybody else have updates either related to like thoughts you wanted to jump in with respect to the GIF tool stuff that happened last week? Anything else there? BCGS or other things you've been up to?
I'm still plugging away with the Dask. It's working, but I found now when you pass how many cores or how many threads to let the Paradiso use, as soon as you set that, and once you go into the inversion, it keeps that in memory. So I got to find a way to reset Paradiso so that it grabs everything or goes back to like its default state. Because if you go in and then you do like calculate sensitivities, for example, before you start the inversion, then yeah, the inversion runs much slower than it would if you didn't use it. So it's like you tell it to only use like one thread, 2 threads, and then it'll keep doing that as your whole inversion runs. So somehow got to find out how to tell it to go back to default, and then it should be wrapped up.
Okay, I can look into it. It's probably just do another MKL at once the fields after it purged the 8 a.m. Just do another MKL and just say dask use all the threads.
Oh, but dask to use all the threads.
Oh
no, we need Paradiso to use all the threads.
Paradiso uses all the. No, we wanted to limit Paradiso, the number of threads on Paradiso. Dask
Yeah.
uses everything.
Yeah. So when we do that, so that when dask runs it in parallel and you run or initiates a Paradiso.
Yeah.
After that, it still uses, like when Paradiso is used later on in the inversion, it still seems that it only uses that one
You
thread.
should never use Paradiso after, right? Because in the inversion, it should just be using the stored sensitivities.
No, Dom, if you're in EM, you have to recompute, you have to resolve every model update. So you have to reuse Paradiso.
Yeah, I know, but he's talking about during the Gauss-Newtons when we're doing like the JVEC, JTVEC. In theory, if we store sensitivities, we don't need Paradiso during that stage, right? So then we can full thread dask on that part. Anyway, I'll look into it.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to like reset it and
it still sticks to it.
And it still seems to run slow, but I might have messed up something.
Yeah,
it's
probably just another operation. Yeah. Sounds like you have all the mechanics. You did it for DC or is this?
Both DC and MT. Nice. Yeah. Well, just over frequency on MT.
Yeah.
Sorry, fields I did over on MT, but everything that we were doing in DC is all good to go.
Okay.
Except for that.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Excellent. Go ahead, Don.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, John, I took like a very brief look at your PR and I will try and jump in. Well, we can actually connect on that when you're here.
Sounds good.
Perfect.
For the GIF tool / new consortium thing, so I'm working on a Python API for analysts, right? So we can talk to the GeoH5, which is just a HDF5 format that has a specific structure inside. So I'm working with the Montreal programmers to write that API.
Is GeoH5 at all related to NetCDF? NetCDF is like the standard in climate and a bunch of other geoscience, but it's different.
No, it's basically it's an HDF5. You can open it with any like H5 can open the file, right? It's just a way to structure meshes, structure points, curves, surfaces, and all that stuff.
Okay.
That made me think maybe there's a way for us to leverage this, because we will want to be able to store tree meshes and all that, right? And H5 is not a bad way to do it. So maybe I'll reach out, or I'll keep thinking about it, how we can, it will be a way for us to store our results and our problems if we wanted to go that way. Otherwise, we need a converter to convert the discretized meshes to the GeoH5. But anyway, that's just what I'm working on.
That's a good point, Dom. And I think I've been playing around a bit with HDF5 just as I'm trying to save stuff up at NERSC. And I think what would be nice to try and do is structure like how we want to save things sort of internally. And then if that happens to align with GeoH5, that's great. If not, like that's okay. We can have a simple like write to H5 sort of IO. But basically getting like what would be really nice is if we can write basically a general like internal SimPEG IO that basically is structured, but we can swap out the backend. So doing like JSON is probably the simple, like dumbest way to do it. H5 is nice for HPC systems, and then ZAR is what we want to do on the cloud. But basically it's all the same. And Xarray might actually be a nice tool for doing that. They have pretty good IO and read-write of like a ton of different files, including HDF5, NetCDF, and ZAR.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you. It would be nice to give the option, but I think at some point we'll need to decide on a file and just stick to it, because the users, the general users, don't want to have to, you know. Right.
Well, I think we set a default backend, but the structure, like the read-write structure to any of those 3 files is basically identical. It's just what it goes to. And so the default backend could be HDF5, but we should expose a mechanism for you to be able to change that.
Right, I see. Sounds good. I think what's nice with the H5 is that you can store models with the mesh. You know, they're not separate entities. They can all link together. And then you have, it doesn't have to be cell-centered. It could be faces. It could be anything you want, right? So it just gives us a more structured way to keep things together. Cool. So yeah, we'll keep going. But I think it'll be nice if we can join forces on this, because it's the same thing. It's all open anyway. So why don't we just write the best storage possible?
Yeah, and it would be nice actually if we can potentially integrate that at the level of Xarray, because then we don't have to worry about any of the conversions. Xarray can just like take care of all of that. So if we can push it upstream, that would be pretty nice.
Sounds good.
Cool. Does anybody else at UBC have updates?
Sounds like it.
Oh, was busy with GIF2 last week.
Last week was madness. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I can give you all a quick update. I was in Bogota last week, which was awesome. So I gave, well, we did 2 things. So I was at SciPy Latin America. And so I gave a short workshop with Damian Alva. He's also a Jupyter developer. He lives in Argentina. So we gave a workshop on using widgets and rich displays in Jupyter. I can send you actually the notebooks that we used. There's some useful tidbits and like things like that I learned. Fernando passed the notebooks on, and like he of course knows the IPython, like what is in IPython beyond Python. And there's a really nice sort of overview of all of the different things that you have. So I can share the notebooks. They might be useful. Sure.
I think that would be really nice.
Yeah, for sure. Unfortunately, the tutorial wasn't recorded, but the notebooks are there, and you can play around with them. And Fernando did a really good job documenting them, so they do actually read like a story. So yeah, you should be able to follow along, hopefully. And if not, then feel free to ping. It's one we're going to try and refine, because a lot of people like are not as well connected with widgets and sort of how powerful they are. And so that was one of our big goals, is to just demonstrate like some of the cool things that you can do. So I showed off some of our like the GeoSci Labs apps and the Voila dashboard that we put together for the Myanmar project, just to give people a sampling of like, here's some of the things you can do.
I watched your talk. Nice talk.
Thanks. It was all right.
Dressed pretty well.
Yeah, dressed up as a keynote, so gotta be looking sharp. But I think it went well. I would love any feedback that people have. Seems like it was well received. So yeah, but it was a pretty amazing audience. A lot of extremely motivated people, super friendly, like welcoming, warm crowd. And actually there's quite a few geoscience connections. So one of the other keynotes was Pedro. His last name is escaping me, but he works with NVIDIA. So NVIDIA does GPUs. And he's done a lot of work with Petrobras, which is the big oil and gas company in Brazil. He's based in Brazil. Getting their simulations and stuff up and running on GPUs. So I'm gonna fire off an email at some point and just get a sense of like what sort of solvers and things like that they actually have plugged in, because we might be able to take advantage of some of that and play around with SimPEG on GPUs and just see what that's like. So yeah, that's sort of like a slow burning project, but it's interesting that we now have that connection.
I need to get going, Lindsay, but we'll catch up later. I'll watch the video.
All right.
Actually, I gotta pick that up.
Okay.
So next week. Yeah.
That's good. Thanks, John.
You're off for the rest of the day?
No, just upstairs in the RU.
Oh, I see.
You're
Okay.
welcome to it.
Yeah.
You're welcome to join the
Yeah. I was going to come up.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically all that I have, unless other people have questions about, yeah, sci-fi Latin America and or other things.
Just one small thing with respect to timing of the meeting. So Devin has a lecture, I think, from 1 to 2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, something like that.
So it would be, I mean, it'd be nicer if we could move it perhaps till 2 o'clock, if that works.
That was like the scheduled normal meeting time. I think we just moved it today because Dom requested that we move it. But does 2 p.m. on Wednesdays in general work for everyone?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, then we can definitely flip back to that next week.
Yeah, those meetings only today. It's not going to be a recurrent thing, so we can move it back to 2 p.m. without affecting Dom's later.
Okay, excellent.
I guess, actually, I was talking with Thibault on Friday there after the BCAGS symposium. I'm getting a little bit further on adding the PW or the Durbin-Watson statistic to the misfit function. I think you were going to do, right?
Oh,
Nice.
Yeah, I've worked out. Well, I think I've worked out the derivatives. I'll have to test them, but yeah, getting closer on that front.
Oh, excellent, John.
Nice.
Sure.
that's awesome. That'll be a fun thing to be able to just like play around with. And then, I mean, if we have the MT code in shape and that plugged in, you can go ping Alan Jones and maybe get him looped in.
I'm kind of almost there to just see if I can talk to him just to make sure that I got the derivatives right, but we'll see. Because he did a little bit of a modification on his, I saw. But
Oh, okay.
Because yeah, it's just the first and second, right? That you need.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Quiet crowd. Nobody.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Oh, and the only other thing that just want to put out there to be sort of thinking about with the Myanmar project is also, now that things have been delayed a bit, is potentially what sort of things we want to prioritize within EM GeoSci to get that to perhaps be a more useful resource, like out of the box for people there. And yeah, that's something we can perhaps just think through and start to, yeah, get back into motion.
That sounds good.
Excellent.
But Lindsay, do you mean with respect to the apps or other aspects?
More so actually like the content that's in EM GeoSci. Right now it's organized, it's really hard to find stuff. And because we have way too, like the tree goes way too deep in some places and there's sort of duplicate labels of some things. Like there's a bit of, it's not clear where information should be stored. So some of the restructuring I think should really follow the presentation layout that we used for the disk. Because that seemed to be like pretty clear and followed like a fairly nice streamlined process. So there's just going to be like some refactoring that needs to be done, but just in terms of organization. And then also in terms of potential content. Dieter pinged, and I think this is actually a really worthwhile point. He was asking about comparisons with analytics. So a magnetic dipole in a whole space, but in frequency domain. And he was asking to compare between like a point dipole receiver and loop receivers. And he wanted to take care of all of the normalizations with respect to if you're actually measuring dB/dt instead of B. And also perhaps if you have a permeable core to the coil, and like what are actually the steps that you need to take to go from a point B measurement or a point H measurement to actually like what this coil is receiving. And so there's potentially a page that we could have on some of these like translating between field data and point measurements pages that might be extremely valuable. So I started an issue on that. So if anyone's interested, you can jump in and chime in.
Yeah, that's great. I think this whole business of just taking like, there was so much good material on there, but just as Lindsay says, even those who put it on, you can't, like, you go to try to find something, like, where the heck is that, right? And yeah, so we just need to kind of refactor that. And, you know, as Lindsay said, the way in which the disk stuff was presented was that it was natural, and you know it followed, and you know connecting that up with the sort of material that's in GeoSci right now, and just moving it to different places, and then having a few extra apps here and there that could really work. I mean, it could be then a really useful resource.
Yeah, disk. I have to say that was really enlightened me going well. Just going from those.
Yeah, and then it would actually serve like the SimPEG documentation. It can serve the EM/PyMod documentation. Like it could be actually really huge for a lot of these open EM codes, because there are, well, and I mean, I'm sure we've all seen this with the questions we get about SimPEG. In a lot of cases, it's not actually about functionality. Like you pick up on something fundamental that somebody doesn't understand. And that's a lot harder to spend time explaining. And so if we actually like can have GeoSci be that resource that we point people to, that would be huge.
Oh, good, because we didn't have anything else to do for tonight. So
let's go. Can write a blog and refactor GeoSci. Cool, excellent. Okay, any last burning items for anyone?
No, I think everybody is just frankly kind of catching their breath after the last couple of weeks, which have just been, so tumultuous. But now, lots of check marks and kind of, reevaluate where we are and move ahead forward.
Sounds good. Perfect. Okay, well, I will see you all next week.
Thanks, Lindsay.